Joining us this week is the former athletic director at St. Cloud State University, now the current commissioner of the NCHC, our favorite conference in college hockey. Commissioner Heather Weems, thank you for joining us on this Tuesday evening.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
So Mike's going to jump right in. We're going to kind of go off of the interview you did with College Hockey News for a couple questions, and then move on from there. But he's got the first question kind of off of that podcast, so I hope some people have spent time to listen to that one. I found it informative, and I hope they did too.
Okay.
Yeah, I listened to it. Actually listened to it today, and you answered a lot of their questions very eloquently, and it gave a lot of good information. Like, I'm not familiar with the names of the people who do the podcast, but like the one of the guys who asked you the questions, I'm a little bit on the other side of not being a fan of the on-site tournament. I like the centrally located tournament, but it's a little bit of a two-party question. One is how how are you going to accommodate the fans that would come? Because we talked with a fan from Omaha last weekend. Excuse me. Last week, that was their family trip. They enjoyed coming to St. Paul. Um, that was kind of one of the main trips that they came with their dad. And then two, how are the allocations for tickets, and what is the conference doing for the opposing fans? Because I'm assuming that there's going to be at least a little section, like most other sports. There's a visiting section, not very much, but how is that going to work in, especially with these smaller arenas? Because you said like CC and Western, the two smallest arenas. How are you planning on working through that?
I'm going to be honest and say we still have a lot of details to work out. Obviously, with the contract ending, with the Excel, we needed to start that conversation early, and from a scheduling perspective, we had to understand where to go. So, to be honest, there are still questions that we need to answer in terms of allotments and how we're going to manage that. The number of tickets, whether it'll be a percentage to try and make it a little bit more fair across the various sizes of arenas that we have. So there's still a lot. At this point, it would be premature for me to tell you exactly how that works because we just haven't had the conversation. There was a part of it that we simply said, okay, we've got to make a decision from a facilities perspective and from a scheduling perspective. That was probably as much of a driver is that coaches, already were saying, wait a second, we've got to be getting to our schedule or our schedules for the 2025-26 year. And part of it for sure was going to the 3 game or the 3 weekend playoff format, which also drove the conversation about neutral site versus campus sites, because it's a lot harder to the coaches certainly were motivated or to look at that 3 weekend playoff, and doing a single game at a neutral site is hard financially, to get interest from a neutral site for that sort of engagement per se. So I don't have a good answer other than to say we've got a couple of years, or let's say a year to, my priority right now is now I'm turning my focus, one, to the frozen face-off for this year. Two,
Mm-hmm.
we've got some bylaws and policies that we need to adapt because of ASU's entry on July 1st. And then that will probably put me in the summer in terms of really trying to put together a working group to look at some of the logistics of how we're actually going to manage.
That makes a lot of sense. You know, you get one thing done, and then you have some ideas, but okay, we got the major part done.
Right.
Now let's hammer out the details.
And I will just say, like for me, to be honest, it's a very bittersweet conversation going to neutral sites, or I mean to campus sites, and partly, I mean, and it's a little bit different, probably, Mike, for you and I, or I'll call it for people who are more in this region. I know for our UMD and St. Cloud State fans, it was an easy trip make, and it was easy to plan that and circle it on your calendar, so to speak. I'm not so sure that all of our membership felt that way. And I go back to even when I started my career at the University of Denver. And I remember going to the WCHA Final Five, at the X, and it's just a great experience. And the staff do such a wonderful job that, it's a little bit bittersweet for me as well. That said, I also understand from the perspective of the coaches and from the student athletes, playing in front of home sites. We haven't actually. I mean, the benefit is, um, at the Excel Center, since the first year, 2018, we've always had at least two local teams, and by local I mean St. Cloud State, UMD, and UND, that make it. I think it would be a very different experience if we had three or four of our outlying teams from a footprint perspective. That's always kind of been the question we've not been able to answer either.
And I promise you, I got hammered for being a local person on Twitter for my thing. I was like, yeah, I know it's easy for me, but
Yes.
So you mentioned scheduling that far out, but I would like to look at scheduling more in the near future here. We're adding the ninth team in Arizona State, and we look at the scheduling for the conference the last 10 years. That last weekend has always been a rivalry weekend, and it's been a very important weekend for figuring out who gets the Penrose, who gets home ice.
Yeah.
I think last year, other than the Penrose being determined, I don't think that any of the seeding outside of Denver and Miami had been figured out until that last weekend. Um, we know that one team will be sitting out conference play pretty much every week of conference play, but do we know what that last weekend is supposed to look like? Are we going to try and keep those maintained rivalries, or will it just be a full rotation across the board?
We're going to give preference when possible to the pod more than anything. So in each of the pods, the Western, the Central, and the Eastern pod, um, in that last week, if we can keep, most of the time that we would end with each of the institutions playing one of their pod, partners, that would be ideal. It won't work out that way every year, and because of, the uneven number of teams, there will be a team that has a bye week that last weekend every year as well. So it will always leave, at least a team or two who are probably going to have to cross, pods, but we will try and give preference, to keeping some of those rivalries in that last weekend.
and that was one thing that I was thinking about is other than the independent schools, I didn't know if um, you were going to keep those, even those rivalries that we've been so used to over the years. I mean, St. Cloud and UMD, we played 13 times in the last 2 years. I mean,
It was
it's
insane.
great, but it's a little insane.
Yeah.
And each of the last 2 years, the winner of that 4 or 5 series has gone on to win the Frozen face-off. But um, that was what I was thinking. Do you schedule an independent that weekend? Do you give the buys earlier in the weekend? And I didn't know how much you could divulge as far as the schedule, uh, versus just giving a team a buy, which in some sense is an advantage that they can get healthy, but it's also good for the coaches that they know this year they're going to get the buy, just kind of a rotating schedule.
Yep.
Um, that that's that's interesting. Just based off of the, well, other than independence, you can't schedule anybody because everyone else is doing their conference play.
Right, right. And that's going to be the case throughout the conference season, is that pretty much every week there's going to be, just with uneven numbers, you're going to have at least one team who is in a bye. And so, and obviously Arizona State is coming in, so they're no longer an independent. So, obviously looking at the Alaskas and Lindenwood would certainly be a possibility. Each of the coaches is going to have to determine that, because a lot of them, to be honest, like that bye, particularly in the second half of the season. They like having at least 1 week where they can get healthy. So, it'll be just a rotation schedule for that more than anything.
And then, we're seeing a lot of influx in college sports, especially in the football ranks of conferences expanding. being eliminated. Like this was the last week, and for I think it's the Pac-12, and the Big Ten going to like 16 teams or something. Do we see a similar trajectory for hockey and kind of like is there expected expansion possibly down the road for the NCHC and kind of how would that look?
Right.
Or
Um,
what would it take for a team to be um, proposed for that kind of like the route Arizona State took?
Yeah, I think to be honest, if any of us could read the tea leaves of what's happening in the NCAA right now, I think we'd all be the guru that everybody wants to talk about or talk to. Right now, our priority, certainly from a hockey perspective, is just ensuring or advocating for a voice at the table. As single sport conferences, we don't sit in the same circles sometimes as our multi-sport friends. And obviously hockey, in both a good and sometimes a disadvantaged way has benefited from, kind of being able to do our own things. But I think as all of the conference changes happen, we are really trying to be a little bit more progressive in thinking about what does the future for college hockey looks like. Because if you think December 5th, Charlie Baker, the president of the NCAA, sent out across all of divisions 1, 2, and 3, kind of his proposal, so to speak, and I'll use that lightly. And we had a conversation with him actually just a few days later. But he sent out a proposal, and as a politician, he would say, with his political background, he would say, lots of times you put a proposal out there, and really what it does is it gets the conversation started. But we know that in the NCAA, continuing to operate the way that we operated for a long time just isn't working any longer. The litigation that's taking place is onerous and actually not beneficial for anybody, I don't believe. And so trying to carve out for hockey, what will that look like? Because in that memo, what he talked about is potentially adding another, call it division, that would essentially be FBS, and giving them even more autonomy than what they have right now in terms of talking about rules and how they set themselves up, and what they do with student athletes in terms of maybe trust funds and those sorts of things. And one of the points that we made at that time was, what you have to remember is hockey already operates differently than most sports. We're multi-divisional, and the example I gave is in the NCHC alone, once Arizona State adds, in a 9-member team, we will have an FBS team, we have FCS teams, we have non-basketball or non-football playing Division 1 teams, we have Division 2 and Division 3. So if all of a sudden you make rules that are different for essentially what's going to be, let's say, 9 or 10 teams in the country, Arizona State, the Big Ten, and probably Boston College, what does that do? And I think what I would say is a little bit of a traditionalist is what we love in hockey is the parity that we've established. And 2 nights ago, Colorado College, a liberal arts school of 2000, came into the Gophers' house and beat them. And there are sports where that's an anomaly. It happens, but you don't count on it. I think in the sport of hockey at the Division 1 level, that's not an anomaly. We've seen that. We've seen in the last 10 years Division 1, 2, and 3 programs win the national championship. And so much of what we want to do is try and retain that competitive equity in a way that makes it exciting for our fans and makes every single weekend matter.
Yeah, parity is definitely something we see because how many times do we see the number one team change throughout a year?
Oh my gosh, this year it's been every weekend, I would say almost.
Yeah, yeah. There's been
certainly seems like, I mean,
very few that have held it from weekend to weekend.
Right.
um, so now a question that Wes and I have talked about, and he did receive this question as well, is NCHC TV. And we love it. We both use it. It's great to be able to have all 4 games at once, even though I typically have 3 on the side and then the UMD game on. Uh, but there's such a dynamic way of like each broadcast has its own dynamic. UMD's cameras look like they're from 1992, so only a year younger than I am. Like North Dakota is high end. St. Cloud, they're very high end, but they also have the student broadcast program. I have kind of a distant cousin that's going to Oklahoma State. We had Kirsten Kroll, who was at St. Cloud State, um, on a few months ago. Would Is there a thought of changing and standardizing the streaming service? And I know it a lot depends on the school too for offering those programs, because I don't even know if UMD does, but maybe working with the schools to introduce a program to allow these students to get into broadcasting. Because my relative, she was like, I only knew of a few options. And then, yeah, there might be non-official things and little bit of mess ups, but it's kind of standardized across the board, instead of, Jim Rich is doing St. Cloud broadcasts with Gino Parrish and um, I can't remember the North Dakota guys' names, and
Yep. Alexander.
UMD. Like, is that something that you would maybe look at or have thought about, or anything going forward?
Yeah, we have conversations about that every year, and we had it as when I was an AD, and we're having it as a commissioner this year. We did put forward just a few weeks ago. We did kind of an internal assessment of each of our institutions and the pros and cons and let's call it the opportunities for improvement. Because we know that we have paying customers or paying subscribers who are looking for a certain level. And so, a little bit, if you say, North Dakota is probably the top of that, simply because they use Midco, and Midco as a regional television provider provides a really high product. So the comments that we provided back were both about the actual camera and audio quality, but then to some degree it was also about, for lack of a better word, some of the talent. And there were some things, I mean, some of it is a financial piece of it. Now that said, we've also seen improvements. I would say, if you watch, I'll use Omaha as an example. Omaha was one of our programs that probably struggled a little bit more in the past. They purchased a new camera this past year, and we think that it's done a pretty significant job of improving. There are cases where it's radio talent that's simply being picked up on NCHC TV, and I think there's a couple of things. One, the radio talent, sometimes then it just means that you're muting. You don't have, during intermission or breaks, you don't necessarily have programming, so it looks a little bit differently. And then you're muting the feed, and then you forget to unmute it, and simply you don't have any audio feed. That's an easy fix. That's simply the responsibility of the people who are doing it. But the other piece is a little bit around, the polish, and I think that the television broadcasters, what they understand is, on a television broadcast, which essentially NCHC TV is, because that's how web streaming works these days, you can't maybe be as much of a homer when you're doing the production for NCHC TV. And I think part of that simply is that, when you're doing your local radio broadcast, for the most part, your listeners are your home teams and your home fans. When you're doing NCHC TV, we have a number of subscribers, and in a lot of cases, it's actually our subscribers actually subscribe to get the away games, because in a lot of cases they're actually at the home games. So we are trying to give some tips and some having some conversation about just some best practices that we can implement. And I think the other piece of it is we are talking about, from a financial perspective, what can the league do to set some standards and increase the quality across the board, not probably with the expectation that everybody gets to the level of Midco, but is there a happy medium that, with some level of investment by the institutions and potentially the conference, that would be a benefit to all of our subscribers?
I have two follow-ups. One, I love UMD, but yeah, they need to work on the homerish a little bit. I sometimes I can't even stand our TV guys. Bruce Siski at radio. I know what I'm getting with him, and it's just radio. But the second part was, with the variation in quality, for me, I'm fine with paying my subscription, um, even if I know it's student run and it's giving these kids the opportunity that aren't playing, that do want to get into. Say there's a kid that he sees that NFL cameraman or NHL cameraman that he wants to do that. Somebody wants to go into broadcast audio, stats, play by play, color commentary, something like that. I think it would be great for it just to be, and yeah, you're going to lose the quality of Midco or something, but like that happy medium of teaching these kids, because they're the future of broadcasting, and maybe taking a step back from quality versus the difference in quality, but
Yeah.
not teaching these kids. That's my opinion on it.
Yeah, the one thing that I would say to that, and putting on my campus hat, having been an athletics director and on a campus that certainly saw some financial struggles, Husky Productions at St. Cloud State is really a preeminent program, a preeminent major at St. Cloud State. But the amount of, even when I first got there as athletics director, the initial investment back in, I'll say 2013, 2014, or not the initial, just an upgrade investment was in the $5-6 million range to get that level of quality. And then you also have to, there's an external executive producer who helps do the teaching and that sort of thing. So I'm cognizant that while particularly I think it probably works a little bit better in radio, at the television level, part of the quality is the talent, but part of it is having the right equipment. And in order to be marketable on the in the profession, that was part of the argument at St. Cloud State of why they needed to invest in order to catapult their students into all of these different positions and be lauded because of their background. They needed to be working on the sorts of equipment and understand the production and the engineering piece of it that would help them move directly into a position. And that is extremely costly, and probably just not something that institutions, particularly just knowing higher ed right now from a financial perspective, everyone's struggling a little bit. They're all choosing where are they going to put their investments? What are they going to be known for? And so, well, as a student proponent, I love the idea. A little bit of it is financial and realistic. How realistic is it?
Yeah, exactly. And like UMD's engineering and different things, and like all these schools have their
Yeah,
different things.
they all have their different things.
All right.
Wes, I think you have one more.
One more topic for you before we get you out of here. We know it's late and we appreciate your time. Um, as a whole in Michigan, we have an issue with refs. I think the NCHC has had its fair share of controversies with refing. Is there a process upon which like calls are reviewed after the fact, or there's like a look at what's going on and how it's determined whether which refing crew is going to ref like playoff series, or what you look for in the off season, what you want to make as far as like points of um, emphasis, things of that nature? Like, is there a backside that fans don't see?
Yeah.
Because I think the biggest one recently was really the major to Poland against Denver, where there was really no intent to even touch the player. He essentially fell into him. I think there may have been an issue with the review equipment, but that was one that I know for sure. Even the coaches who do a try their best to not make things vocal, even they kind of let their feelings known on that one.
First, I will say refing is, the whole officiating challenge certainly exists, and it's only heightened with all of the review equipment and HDTV. Let's be honest, when you had the old analog systems and you could hardly see the puck, people couldn't be nearly as discriminatory in actually seeing and thinking, what they thought. So, from a process perspective, so we have a director of officiating who grew up in the officiating world, which I did not. So it's good that he has more knowledge than I do. Um, and our director of officiating is always looking, recruiting, in conversation with up and coming officials or those potentially coming back sometimes from really trying to get into the AHL and the NHL. They're working with USHL and those sorts of programs just to try and keep the pool of talent open. Obviously, there are fewer and fewer people being serious about going into roughing, so that pool is only going to get harder. And obviously, as people retire and step away, that becomes problematic as well. And I'm not trying to defend things. I'm trying to give some
Yeah.
sort of an inside understanding of what it looks like. I think the other piece that I always do like to remind folks is, for our referees, they have full-time jobs all week, and then they give up their, Thursday nights or Friday through Sunday, and then go home. And in many cases, their wives hand their kids over and say, "Okay, it's you now because you've been gone the last couple of days." Our coaches and our student athletes get to practice their craft every single day, pretty much. Our officials, and I think we have a great group. And I say to the coaches, if they didn't wear the stripes, they'd be guys. They're just they love the game. They want to give back to the game, and they'd be guys you'd go out for a beer with, to be honest. Um, and our goal is to continue to make them better. And so yes, we do have through our DV Sports system, which is our official review system, each week the director of officials, or maybe not every week, but we'll pull a call, and he'll put it out on a network so that they can all look at it, and it's called You Make the Call. And then you ask them to go in to review it, not just the ones who did that game, but everybody go in, review it, and then they have to defend what their decision is, and then you go back and you kind of explain it. The reality is there's always subjectivity, and when you're on the ice trying to look through three people and figure out exactly what happened, sometimes that view is different than maybe it is from the top. But I would also tell you, in a lot of cases, when I look at the reviews based upon the actual rules, they they're good calls. It just is. There's always going to be the ones that are the most controversial. There is a level of subjectivity which you're never going to get away with unless we go to AI officiating, which maybe someday will happen. But we do have a process by which we review individual calls throughout the week. We do have in the fall, we have a session where we get together with the referees, and in some cases the linesmen as well, particularly in a rules change year, and we'll do essentially like a 2-day clinic, and just talk through some things. We have at pretty much every conference game and most non-conference games, we have what we call a supervisor of officials, and they sit next to the video review person, and they try and help. They're not supposed to, they don't tell an official what to call, but when they come into the box and they're looking at a review, they will make sure that they're applying the right rules. They might say, "Hey, we think you should see this angle," and those sorts of things. And one of the things, we do have a working group that's starting next week, actually getting together to look at DV Sport, and how it works and doesn't work at some of our institutions. Some of our DV Sport, we have an 8-camera system, and there are some institutions where just the placement of the camera doesn't give us the best angles. There are some institutions where we don't always get all of the angles, and for instance, sometimes the television angle or the webcasting angle that our coaches are getting or that we're putting out on NCHC TV doesn't come through necessarily, the in-house, so to speak. So we're trying to figure out if there's a better way that we can ensure that what the coaches see and what the officials are seeing are the same thing. So yes, there's conversation continually about officiating, and trying to give feedback to officials. There's evaluations. Coaches are provided the opportunity to evaluate calls every single week. Um, and then particularly we try, lots of them won't do it every single week, but sometimes, then we'll try and get it at the half to say, "Hey, what are you seeing? Is there anything that we can provide feedback on?" And then as we get into playoffs, yes, they are ranked, and there is selection done as we get into the playoff times.
Yeah, no, I think we certainly there's that 3 hour window when your team is on the ice. Every call that goes against your team is the worst call imaginable. Every call that goes for your team is the best call imaginable.
Yep.
Outside of that, I hope most people tend to leave everything in the arena and not take it to a different level, because again, they are, for the most part, guys who are just trying to give back to a sport that they appreciate as much as the fans do, and it's nonsense to take those things further than that. And I think a lot of it is just the fans don't know or understand quite as fully as a ref does, and we're not necessarily given those same opportunities to understand the calls, that I think creates a lot of
Yeah,
animosity
and
in certain states.
we did start up, and again, it's just, I think our third session is coming out here soon, but we did mic'd up with Mike, which is a new social media um bit. Mike Schmidt is our director of officiating. So once a month, November, December, January, and February, we've put out, just he picks a topic and he tries to explain it. I think the one coming up now is coaches' challenges, and what can they challenges and what can they not, and how does the whole review process work. So there's tidbits that we try and get out there. And I like that level of transparency. I mean, it's not a perfect science. If anyone thinks that it's going to be, just take those rose-colored glasses off. But I think that we do try and have good feedback with our officials. We are the only conference in the country who has supervisors at all of our games, that can try and provide some level of feedback in between games, after games. They also go and talk to the coaches on Friday before the game starts. Saturday between games, they'll go talk to the coaches. Hey, anything you want us to be looking for, that sort of thing. So we've tried to be really proactive about it. Again, it's just not a perfect science.
Wes, you can speak for yourself that you think every call is the greatest for your team and every call is the worst for your team. No, I'm kidding. But my dad said it best. Like, no matter what call you make in any sport, and I've reffed hockey years ago at lower levels, but no matter what call you make, you're going to make half the people mad. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. And it's a thankless job. And I get on refs. I used to coach basketball, and I almost got technical fouls because I wasn't good, because I was coaching for my dad, so I had to rein it in because otherwise I was going to get yelled at home. But it's a thankless job, but you do it because you love the game, and that's the best part. And actually, one of the referees in the NCHC Beyondage, his mom was my health teacher in high school. So I'm like,
Yep.
I guess I can still get on him, but I don't want to get on him that much if I'm at a game.
Yeah. No, I mean, we take seriously. It's a big part of the game. It really is. And so we do take it seriously, and we think about it, and we're trying to put the best people out there that we can, and we're trying to make sure we're giving them feedback, and that we're trying to make the product the best that it possibly can be. And in a lot of cases, if you actually looked at it, they get a heck of a lot more right than they get wrong. But nobody pays attention. Like in life, no one pays attention to what you get right.
Yeah, exactly. It's the wrong stuff. Everybody's like, ah.
Yes.
All right. Well, that'll wrap up our session with Commissioner Weems. We'll let her get out of here and back to more important things than talking to us knuckleheads. Once again, thank you so much for your time. It was a great conversation.
You're welcome. Happy to do it anytime.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it so much.
All right. Take care. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too. All right, we'll take a short break here, and we'll be right back. back. We're in the wrong places, so let's put me over here, you there, and we're good to go again. Once again, big thanks to Commissioner Weems for joining us, taking time to answer our questions. Hopefully, those who listen to this found that as informative as I did, and I hope Mike feels the same way. But let's jump into the weekend that was a 4-day weekend of hockey. Some great matchups, some great games. Um, the NCHC really showing the rest of the conferences that we are not to be taken lightly. The last week of non-conference play went strongly in our favor, especially in my case, only getting 2 of my picks wrong.
So same with me.
Let's run through our picks and see how you, I, and our guest from last week, Brent, did on the calls.
I definitely went through Brent's too because, well, since he picked, he gets to be on the board. So we'll start with Brent's team, Nebraska Omaha, and they won 4-3 in overtime over UMass Lowell in their tournament. I don't even remember what tournament it was at this point. And
Desert Hockey Classic, hosted by Arizona State.
Desert Hockey Classic,
I believe was the name of it.
Yeah, I had to look at who the other teams were. So Brent and I, all 3 of us picked Omaha to win the first night, and then Brent and I, we decided to go a little bit more particular depending on who they played. You just said Omaha was going to win no matter what.
They had a shot. They
did, but they did lose to Arizona State on Saturday 2-1.
In overtime. 2 overtime games for the Mavericks. Yeah, I'll tell you what, dude. Arizona State, I think I texted you this, or I was telling somebody this. They could be trouble in the NCHC in that middle portion of the grouping there.
No, we've talked about it a few times on here.
I think they're going to come in and they're going to compete for home ice in that first round of the playoffs the first 2 years before it switches to the on-campus sites. They've played all of their NCHC matchups this year extremely tight. Beating Omaha. I think they split with Miami earlier in the season. They split, I believe, with Denver. Don't remember what they did with Colorado College. They had an overtime game and a regulation win against Colorado College. So they must have maybe they went to a shootout. They have a tie with Colorado College and a win.
Yeah, shootout.
So I mean, they have. If you were to take their first half of the season, they have a solid conference schedule, in wins and losses.
Yeah, they've been building there, and I think last year was a little more. They expected a little bit more out of the team than they got. Just as far as wins and losses goes, but the last couple of years, you'll see them in the rankings. They're kind of right there. I think 2 years ago, they were just shy of missing the NCAA tournament just because they were an independent school. And they didn't quite have that pairwise that they needed to get in as an at-large bid. So they're going to come in firing. I don't think they're going to come in as a top team, but that 3, 4, 5 seed.
I put them
6. I could see them.
I see them strongly 4, 5, 6. Like they will be competing somewhere in the 4, 5, 6 range. The way they're playing right now, and as high maybe as 3. But to me right now, I think the teams that I would say are consistently 1 through 3 are probably North Dakota, Denver, and St. Cloud. Western kind of farts around somewhere in the 2 through 4 range for me. And that might change looking into next year, but Arizona feels like they're right there too. They don't quite feel like a 1 or a 2. Three might be kind of where I would say that their ceiling is at for right now. But they're going to be a very competitive team in the NCHC, and quite honestly, I am excited for them to be in here. And even though it's going to make the scheduling weird, I can't wait to see them at Lawson. I think they've been here once before, but that was when they were still, new to college, to the Division One ranks, and really what they're coming with now is completely different from what they had when those games were played.
They're kind of them and Penn State have kind of followed the same mold where you hop in. Well, even St. Thomas now too. They've the last couple of years they've taken jumps up. Takes you a couple of years to get your footing, and once you find your footing, then you can build a program. And they're building their programs into solid competition that could make the tournaments.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Penn State's competed pretty well in the Big Ten. Arizona's been close a couple times to getting really into the tournament. I think this year they might have a slightly better shot. The only thing, again, that independent scene is so hard to get the at-large bid out of because you have to basically play perfect the entire year. You've got to be, and you have to schedule it right. And the second half of the year is always difficult for you as an independent because you're scheduling other independent teams. You're not getting necessarily a shot at those top seeded teams like you see in the NCHC, where there's constantly a team in the top 5, top 10. The Big Ten has a couple teams up there, usually at least one or two teams up there, it usually being Michigan or Minnesota. Um, the Hockey East usually has a couple sneak in there here and there. Atlantic has a couple. So the conferences really kind of drive the polls and some of the what we process as being the more competitive schedules. And some of that does play into the pairwise too. I mean, the pairwise kind of takes those wins a little more weighted than playing another independent team. So it really does not. It really hurts the independent teams, which is kind of unfortunate. But again, I think ASU is making the right choice. I think the NCHC welcoming them is the right choice. Um, and I hope maybe somewhere down the road that a couple more teams end up coming into the conference, and we get to see an even number of teams again, and no one's really kind of sitting out. Because you think about it, if there's some advantage to not having that last game or that last weekend. If you're the ninth seed potentially, and you got that free pass that last weekend, you're preparing for who the eighth seed is, and getting to rest up, knowing that you have potentially three games the next weekend that you have to play. Or if you're
potentially 4.
Yeah, possibly 4.
If and that's kind of why I brought that up to you with that bye week on the end, because it was like, what do you do? All of a sudden,
and it's not like you can.
That's a rotating schedule.
Yeah.
Like that makes sense.
And I mean, it's not like you can change it mid-season either. It's not like you can say, oh well, actually, Omaha's the number 1 seed, so let's give them that weekend kind of like a first seed bye. Like, nah, dude, if Miami doesn't have a game that's scheduled that weekend and they're the 9th seed, they're not playing. And if you're the 8th seed, you've got, potentially 6 games in 7 days, 8 days.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to bring it up too, was because, okay, what do you do? And do you give one team a bye, or do you make them play and kind of have everybody on that even playing field coming through? But the scheduling, you pretty much have the Alaska teams. You have Lindenwood,
Stonehill,
Augustana, and Stonehill.
I think Augustana's going to the CCHA.
But as of right now, like, I don't know when Augustana is joining the CCHA.
I think, aren't they technically already in the CCHA?
Well, I have the standings up, and 2025, 26 is when they will be a full-time member.
Okay, so yeah, but I mean, they're already slated into the CCHA.
So that'll give them 9 teams as well.
Yeah.
Just really quickly going back to the new programs, St. Thomas is currently second in the CCHA.
St. Thomas kind of whooped up on your boys in that exhibition game.
Well, we'll get to that.
Just throwing that out there.
So, next series was your Western Michigan Broncos playing Lindenwood for the second time this year. Couldn't watch it because it was in Lindenwood.
Actually, if you had checked out Twitter, Lindenwood offered that free to viewers, so I was able to watch both of those games, and they were solid games. Once again, dude, Lindenwood, I'll tell you what, Lindenwood feels a lot like Miami did last year, or even Colorado College seems to be in the regular season, where their goaltenders provide an opportunity for that team. Now, the rest of the team has to do pretty much everything right, which, as we've seen for Miami, is a bit of a struggle. As we've seen in the 4 games that Western has played Lindenwood, that has been a bit of a struggle for the rest of the team to play perfect games. Friday night, Lindenwood had a legit chance to steal that game. It was like 2-2 until late in the third period. Once again, Western was just hammering shots on goal. Their goaltender, who is listed at 6 foot, but is not 6 foot unless they're counting him in skates. I don't think they are, and I don't know why it irritates me this much. Probably because I wish I had hit 6 foot and I didn't hit 6 foot. So stop lying about being 6 foot, you little shit. Was a wall once again. But again, Western struggled a little bit on the Friday game, but the Saturday game, they found spots and put the puck in those spots. And it was a close game Friday night, but it was not a close game Saturday, as they get a 3-2 win Friday and a 6-1 win Saturday, completing the sweep that I believe all 3 of us predicted in what might have been kind of the most predictable weekend left in the college hockey schedule, at least for NCHC teams.
All 3 of us had a sweep, so through those 2, I was 4-0. You were 3-1. And Brent was 4-0.
Listen, I'm sorry that I had more confidence in the conference team than they deserved. They let me down.
Arizona State's a tough team.
UNO
You know that.
Does nothing but just ruin my emotions. When I need Western to go down there and sweep them and for everything to be great, no, they have to come out and steal a win. When I pick them to win a tournament, they have to go, nah, we don't really want to play that hard on Saturday. We're going to just let Arizona State take this one, their home tournament. It's fine. I don't.
They're like me. They just don't like you.
That's rude. That's rude.
The next one that I have on my list is North Dakota at Fairbanks.
Well, that was
like it was at Fairbanks.
Yeah. It was not. It was at UND because they were on NCHC TV.
I wasn't paying attention. The way they have these scores is completely stupid. But North Dakota, they win 6-4 and 6-2 over Fairbanks. Did not see that, but that one, Fairbanks, they're just not quite the team that we saw last year. And through the non-conference, we've seen them a couple times, and they're just definitely not as strong. Don't put up as much of a fight. And North Dakota's just back on their roll again.
It was a get-right weekend for North Dakota. The Friday game was extremely close. That was another tight one, really, kind of until the end. I think Alaska led after the first period. A big second period is really what put North Dakota on the map in that one, if I remember correctly. I think they had a 5-goal second period I think it was a 7 goal second period total, or a 6 goal second period total. Alaska led 1-0 after the first. North Dakota came storming back to put up 5. Alaska got 1 there, and then 2 in the third to get it closer. And I believe they North Dakota closed the door with an empty netter to seal the game. Um, but no, I mean, yeah, you lose essentially 4 straight if you're North Dakota, all in overtime. 2 of them being conference games, an exhibition loss to the U.S. under 18 team, and the one before the um, Colorado College series, all in overtime. So luckily they were able to not get to overtime, but an improved weekend for North Dakota nonetheless. And they held on to their 4 spot in the rankings. Um, but there's some question marks still to this North Dakota team. They are consistently inconsistent, even though they're holding top spots. It'll be interesting to see how they really do here down what is kind of the grinder part of the schedule. That being, a lot of top teams. The second half of the season, every game means a little bit more as teams are trying to hunt down that Penrose Trophy and that home ice advantage, which is going to start being a lot more important. Those top seeds going into the playoffs as we move into the transition of adding Arizona State and to on-campus sites in a couple of years. So really, home ice is going to mean a whole lot more as we get going here.
And I think, I don't have it up in front of me. Their transfers, basically their whole brand new defensive core, with new incomers and, well, that was a dumb sentence. Incoming freshmen and then transfers coming in that maybe have not played in the NCHC aren't gonna really know the grind, and I think they're gonna rely a little bit more on Person back in net for the defensive prowess. They have more talent than he did at Miami, but they're still going to have to rely on him. And I think he'll be up to the task, but you
That,
never know.
that was another storyline in this game. Here, Person did not play this weekend. He had come down with an illness, so they ran the backup goalies out there. So decent performances from those guys, picking up the 2 big wins while Person was out, hopefully getting healthy so he can come back and reestablish himself in conference play here, as he had played every minute up until the exhibition game against the US 18 team. So hopefully it was just a seasonal bug. Hopefully everything else is good. I know they were kind of resting a slight injury, I think, too, and that's why he didn't play against the USA team. But I believe he was expected to start against Alaska and ended up coming down with a bug late in the week. So those are things to always check out and follow along the rest of the week, because our news is not 100% up to date as far as when we pick games, but we know the news from the weekend that we're generally recapping here. So take that for what it's worth.
So after that series, I was 6-0. You were 4-2 because you picked North Dakota to lose on Saturday. And
yeah, I was really expecting more out of Alaska.
Yeah, Brent was 5-1. He predicted North Dakota to lose in overtime on Friday, which was a very bold prediction. But yeah, it did not happen. So I was feeling pretty good about myself after that one. The next series, we all had it. It's kind of easy to see coming. Denver versus Niagara in Denver. Denver did Denver things, 5-2 and 6-1.
Yeah, Denver got their goaltender Matt Davis back for this series. It was, I think, what we expected it to be. Maybe the only benefit was that Niagara had just played Miami, so they were doing kind of a mini NCHC tour. But It went about as well as I think we figured it was going to go for Denver, being without a Zev Byam and head coach David Carl, who were busy winning gold medals with Team USA. Did not make it back in time for that series. But I think some players did make it back for the next series that took place on Sunday and Monday of Colorado College versus Minnesota. Now, these games I did not get to watch because
Well, I
they
was
took
just gonna
place in
go.
Minnesota.
I was gonna quickly just go over the UMD St. Thomas.
I mean,
I did not watch it because it was an exhibition.
are you sure you want
St.
to?
Thomas, huh?
Are you sure you want to go over that?
I'm just wanted to point out that St. Thomas beat UMD 3-1, and you and I both picked UMD to lose, and Brent picked UMD to win for God knows what reason. So I was 9-0 at that point. You would have been, because I reversed the order. You would have been 7-2.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-2.
Yeah, 7-2. And then Brent was 8-1, I think. Oh no, he was 7-2 as well. Yeah, for whatever reason, I put CC before UMD in your two, and I put CC last. Now, Colorado College and Minnesota. Minnesota got Snuggerud back and a couple of the other players back from the World Juniors. And I was able to watch it because it was on TV here. I at least watched the Sunday game. I did not watch yesterday's game. I don't even know what time it started, but I was watching college football and other things at that point. But what I did watch on Sunday, Colorado College, they looked outmatched in the first 5 to 10 minutes of that game. Minnesota's speed was really bothering them. But after about those first 5 to 10 minutes, Minnesota got really sloppy defensively, and Colorado College started to take advantage of those mistakes, which they ended up winning 6-4. And for Colorado College to score 6 goals was that was pretty impressive for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think they had a lot of confidence going into that game. They had gone to overtime twice with North Dakota, who was, a top 4 team in the country at least. I think they were they number 1 at that point.
I believe so.
They'd gone to overtime with them, both nights being 3-2 wins. They played well in their exhibition game against Minot State, 7-1. So I mean, the offense has picked up a little bit. You know what you're going to get from Umberto, a goaltender who's going to give you a chance to win. It was a good goalie matchup between Umberto and Close, I believe, was the starter for Minnesota both nights. And two, extremely talented goaltenders. Either one will give you the opportunity to win a game any given night. And it was really just a matter of whether or not Colorado College could get some offense to match what they were going to get from the goaltender. And they did. They got a little bit of power play luck. They went 1-for-1 on the power play Friday. The PK for Colorado College, which we know is usually really tough to beat, they were 3-for-3 on penalty kills. When you're winning the special teams battle like that and you've got a goaltender who gives the guys in front of him a lot of confidence, it makes for the opportunity to win games even on teams that you're quote unquote under talented of, I guess is really the worst way to have said that. but
that you're overmatched by
yeah,
on paper.
yeah.
Um,
Um,
yeah, I mean, it's when I was watching it, till the Gophers came back and actually won because Jimmy Snuggerud scored 2 goals on Friday, and one
in
of them
Sunday.
or Sunday, yeah. Um, one of them, and Berko actually got a little bit of a piece of, but he's just got an unbelievable shot. I, there wasn't. I don't think Emberico could have been in much better position the way that it was, and he just ripped it past him. And the second goal was just also ridiculous. Um, but against a team like that with that much high end talent, where Colorado College doesn't have those top recruits, you have to take advantage of the mistakes. And it was 3-1 after the first period for Colorado College, and they took advantage of the mistakes. They were getting shots from the slot constantly. It was unbelievable how many times the Gophers just let them sit there and turned over pucks and gave them an opportunity on close, where close had pretty much no chance. And then it kind of went back and forth from there. There's 3-2, 4-2, 4-3, 5-3, 5-4, and then eventually 6-4. Uh, but it was a good game, and it was good for Colorado College to go in. And then Monday, oh, it's probably a good thing I didn't watch that game because it doesn't look like it was much of a game.
No, Colorado College got open the scoring early in the first period. Then it really kind of seemed to be all Minnesota. Colorado College does get one back in the third period to make it a 3-2 game, but Minnesota took over 3 goals in the middle part of the third period to seal that one up. A long week for Colorado College as they just stay in Minnesota.
Oh, hey, let's get the final standings here. So I had my two incorrect predictions. I predicted Colorado College to lose on Friday, win on Saturday. You predicted the opposite, and Brent predicted Colorado College to lose both. So I ended up 9-2. You ended up 9-2. Brent ended up 8-3. So we are still tied at 75 and 43 for the year. And yeah, Brent's 8-3.
Tell you what, those are not terrible numbers. Those would be profitable in the gambling world.
If we're right that much, I'll take it.
So, but I don't gamble. So, this weekend we are back in NCHC play. Got a couple rivalry series, a couple former WCHA rival series ish, maybe, possibly, per se, could be.
I believe three. I believe all three of the others, the one CCHA, and I believe the other three are WCHA.
Yeah, but I mean, tradition. As far as the NCHC concerns, that Nebraska, North Dakota series is one of the protected rivals at the moment.
Yeah, I don't think they were rivals in the WCHA, but they
No.
were WCHA opponents.
Yeah. So we'll start out. We'll go in start times on the weekend, which means Western Michigan making the trip down to Miami. This series has not been even remotely close the last couple years. I think the closest it was game 4 last year. They went to overtime. Miami was up late in the game. I believe Max Sasson scored the overtime goal to pick up the hat trick. That might even have been game 5 last year, or game 3 of the series. But I don't think Miami has won a game in this series in like the last 3 years, 3 or 4 years. And is not, they have not had a good time with this. and I really don't think they're gonna have another one anytime soon here. Um, everyone's once again, Western has figured out how to get the most out of their guys offensively. They're still a high scoring offense, which I think everyone's kind of wondering how they keep doing it year in and year out when they lose their most productive lines year in and year out to pro contracts. I'm trying to write and talk at the same time, and that's not a good idea. Miami is a little bit weaker in the goaltending position, I would say, with the loss of Person to North Dakota. Where are they sitting at right now?
I would say, I mean, unless you had like Cozy or Umberco, they lost a lot in the goaltending department.
They're 0-7-1 in conference play. They're 6-10-3 overall. They have a tie in a shootout, which resulted in a shootout loss against Minnesota Duluth. That's really the only thing worthwhile mentioning of the conference play. I mean, I guess a 4-6 loss to North Dakota is worth mentioning. 2-3 loss against St. Cloud. They went to overtime twice with Arizona State, losing one in the shootout and winning in the overtime period. Oh, hey, cool! Look at that. I just fix this a second. Nope, not out. Hang on. But you don't need to see me. You can hear me. I'll try this again. There we go. But it's I just don't have a lot of confidence in this Miami team. Now they could steal one. Western could do some silly things, and we've seen them beat teams that they probably shouldn't beat, like a St. Cloud State or a North Dakota or a Minnesota Duluth in weird fashion. But again, they just have not had much luck lately with Western Michigan. So I'm gonna continue the Western train and say that they get the win Friday. Honestly, I'm just gonna say that they sweep, but they'll win Saturday too.
There's just part of me that feels like Miami is going to take one of these games. I don't know why, because it seems really idiotic to do. But they just have a knack of winning games that you don't think they're going to win at all. It's not often that they do, but they have a knack for it. And so I'm going to go with Miami winning on Friday and then Western coming back and absolutely blitzing them on Saturday.
I mean, if there's
because it is in Oxford, and it just I don't know how excited they are there.
I would say if there's a game that Miami could steal, it could potentially be that Friday game.
That's the one that I'm thinking. It's just
but
coming off the trip to Lindenwood and then going back on the road again, like
honestly,
it's Miami.
The series feels a lot like the Lindenwood series, with Miami not having as good of a goaltender.
Yeah, that is
true. All right. Next up is Colorado College. They chose at Minnesota Duluth. Colorado College chose to stay in Minnesota, which is probably a good call, and make the trip up to Duluth. Seeing as they played Sunday, Monday, there'd be no point to fly back to Colorado just to go back to Duluth there. This one feels a lot closer than I would have predicted at the beginning of the year. And I lean Colorado College, other than, it's a short schedule, so that there might be an opportunity here for Minnesota Duluth to capitalize on that. Colorado College is on a heck of a roll here. splitting with Minnesota, taking 2 games in overtime against North Dakota. Ow, that was my knee on my desk.
Proud of you.
That really hurt. I think Minnesota Duluth gets the win on Friday just because that short of a schedule. Yes, it's been done before. It's not something we see regularly, but I think it does take a lot out of a team, and to be in away from home ice for that long feels like, waking up in a hotel bed is a lot different than waking up in your normal bed. You kind of get stiff after a little while, even if you're doing morning skates and stuff. So I'm going to give the Friday game to Duluth. But I think Colorado College shakes it off and responds with a win on Saturday to split the weekend.
I have a feeling that Colorado College is already up in Duluth.
Oh, I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
I'm sure they got up there today.
The nice part is they don't have to travel. They're already in town. And they're going to... Problem is, I just don't have confidence in UMD right now. They have not given me anything other than Ben Steves to be confident about. I think Colorado College still is going to be riding off that win against Minnesota. Yeah, they got blown out, but that's going to give them more motivation to say that was a fluke and come back. And I think they're going to come back hard on Friday. I think I'm going the opposite of you. I think Colorado College gets the win on Friday, and then I think UMD does respond. Ben Steves gets 7 goals, and UMD wins 7-6 because, I could probably play better goalie than what we have in net right now. No offense to those guys, but the goaltending is atrocious. The defense is atrocious. Ben Steves is the only really good player that we have at this point. But I think Colorado College wins on Friday and UMD wins on Saturday.
I give the offensive advantage to Duluth. I give the defensive and goaltending advantage to Colorado College in the series. But I think Minnesota, a guy like Ben Steves, he can get loose in transition, and he can put, if he gets behind the defense, and Berko's going to have a hard time stopping him. And I think that's why I will say that sleeping on hotel beds and for a week is going to limit. Again, these guys are these are almost pro athletes. They're conditioned for some of this stuff. But that being said, I think it's going to hurt Berko a little bit more just to have been not able to, because it's been what? They've probably been in Minnesota for almost a week now. And by the time they play the games, it's going to be close to that. They probably got there Friday, maybe Saturday.
I would say probably Friday. So it'll be probably a week.
At least a week by the second game.
Yeah.
So, on planes, on buses, morning skate, in hotel beds, which again are, after an extended period of time, are not the greatest things to sleep on. A couple nights here and there, okay, whatever. But extended stay on a hotel bed kind of tends to suck for everybody.
Sampling the local fare.
Yeah. So I give Minnesota Duluth just a skosh more of an advantage on that Friday game. Maybe Berko's a little stiff even through morning skate. Maybe he doesn't get loose quite until the end of that game, and a guy like Steves gets loose and puts one past him. I think they also are close to getting, was it Francis?
Will Francis.
Yeah, I think he's close to coming back or is back. Um,
I don't know. It just for me, some of the leaders that were supposed to be leaders and the better players, the last 2 years, they just have not really shown up. And I believe it was Biondi last year. He was supposed to take a step up, but then he decided he needed surgery on both his shoulders, which that's fair. You know, do what's best for you, but he hasn't had the greatest of a year either. So it's I don't know. This team is just underwhelming me compared to a lot of previous years.
this also feels like the time that Minnesota Duluth finally gets things going too. So I'll lean on history, and I'll stick with my picks of a split UMD Friday, Colorado College Saturday. Next up on the list, there's some storylines here. Uh, it is Cameron Berg's first game against his former team as he transferred from Omaha to North Dakota this season, playing well for the Fighting Hawks. Also, it is in person once again taking on Omaha, a team that he has played pretty solid against when he was at Miami. I I lean North Dakota because of the goaltending, but really, like Cozy's not far off of Person. I think if Person's healthy, there's a slight edge between the two. If that's who's running the net, I assume he's going to be back again. I don't know how he's recovered from his illness. Offensively, I feel like these two teams are pretty even without looking at the stats because I don't want to. Defensively, I think as although North Dakota is playing pretty decent right now, we've seen them struggle from time to time. Defensively, they're not quite as consistent as you would like them to be defensively just yet. Um, Omaha feels like they are playing pretty good defense, and it'll really just come down to which goaltender can play 60 minutes and make probably one or two more saves than the other one, or which defense can block one or two more shots than the other, and which special teams plays better than the other. It's really kind of this one feels like, even though ranking wise, it's different ends of the spectrum. I think these two teams, you throw the records out the window. I do believe North Dakota has kind of owned this series lately. And they might be feeling good after their weekend of shaking off the overtime bug. But if Omaha can keep the games close and force it to overtime, I feel like they have a really good chance of picking up points if they can get to 3-on-3 hockey. But it's definitely going to be close games, I feel like. And almost like a toss up, really. I feel North Dakota is going to win it Friday. And I'm kind of undecided about Saturday. I don't feel like it's going to be a sweep. And I feel like I might get the Friday game wrong. I feel like I might get this backwards, but I'm going to go UNO Saturday again. But it could just as easily go the other way.
Well, if you want the stats, North Dakota has scored 76 goals overall for the year. Omaha, 51. So a little bit more of a discrepancy. I do think Omaha does have a chance to steal one. Mostly because the games that I've watched of North Dakota, they have stretches where they just completely break down and they look like they have no idea what they're doing. They just open up and leave Person out to dry and he's only human. He can only do so much. He's a great goalie, but I mean, the best goalies have had bad games, and they've let in goals. Nobody, no one in the Hall of Fame has 1,000 save percentage. That being said, I don't know how much Omaha can hold up against North Dakota, and especially if North Dakota gets a decent lead. I don't know if Omaha has the firepower to come back, even with those lapses in defense that North Dakota has shown this year. Um, I'm going to North Dakota sweep. I just think they're a little too much for Omaha. Why do you look confused?
I'm reading. This is my reading face. Continue. Sweet for North Dakota.
But yeah, I have a sweep for North Dakota because I think they're going to be just a little too much for Omaha to overcome offensively.
Trying to see. Yeah, Omaha's had some offensive games here and there. Again, they play decent against Person too. It's been a pretty back and forth series between Miami and Omaha the last few years while Person was there.
Yeah, just I mean their goal differential is overall it's +1. In the conference it's -9.
But again, I think if they're able to keep that game, keeping it close is what's going to benefit Omaha. If it's a 1-1 game late in the third and they can kind of get it to overtime, I think they have the edge overtime because we've seen North Dakota, even though they put extra practice into that overtime, they've struggled in overtime no matter who's in the goal or who's in net. And it's been Person in net for those overtime losses outside of of the ones that counted, it's been Person in net. So, and Omaha has some overtime wins this year. So they know how to do it. They know what to do. So if they can keep it close or get it to overtime, I give them. I'm more comfortable with them picking up a win, but it's keeping that North Dakota offense in check, and it's going to be a real test for whoever they have in net to do so and playing on the blue line.
And that's the big if. It really is.
All right, the last matchup of the weekend, maybe by default, should be the closest matchup. We've got two coaches who were recently coaching together, winning USA its gold medal in the World Juniors. That being David Carl, who's the head coach of Denver, was the head coach for the Team USA team, and Brett Larson, the head coach of St. Cloud State, serving as an assistant on that USA team. They'll be coaching against each other this weekend in Denver. They get Zev Bion back, who had a really good World Juniors tournament. Does Denver. Denver held it down without Carl against Niagara last weekend. Couple of the top teams in the NCHC standings, I believe. I don't remember where Denver's at, but I think they're up there, aren't
they? Denver is 4th, St. Cloud is 1.
Ooh, I thought Denver was higher than that. Okay. I mean, the chance for Denver to maybe catch up, a chance for St. Cloud to, put a little stamp of ownership on that number 1 spot if they can come away with some points here. It's definitely not the Denver team that we're used to seeing. But if that offense gets going, watch out. I think they're the highest scoring offense in the NCAA right now. They've scored 105 goals overall. Only 39 in the conference. So that might tell you a little something. St. Cloud State, however, has only scored 58 goals overall, 29 in the conference. So I think St. Cloud has the lead goaltender-wise in Dominic Bassi, formerly of Colorado College.
I would agree with that. Um,
Matt Davis coming off an injury. Their backups played well. It's in Denver. Denver plays pretty solid at home. Um, Honestly, I think these will be the two matchups of the weekend. If I had to pick a matchup of the weekend I was only going to watch one series and I couldn't watch my own series, this would be the one to watch for me.
I mean, there is a reason that it's CBS Sports Network.
And Friday night is it Friday or Saturday that's on CBS? Probably Friday, right?
Friday.
Hey, that is a great call to watch. Unfortunately, well, I guess not unfortunately, because I wouldn't hear the call anyway, because I would be at the games. But the old CBS Sports Network crew chose not to visit Kalamazoo this year. Again, not that it really affects me because I would be at the game anyway. And I think Western is on the broadcast twice. But they're not coming here. So that's the loss for them. Yeah, CBS Sports Network with the call. That's going to be a great call. Dave Starman, Alex. What is your last name? From North Dakota, because he does the CBS Sports Network calls now. And I can't remember his name. But I feel like it starts with a B. Anyway,
I'll look it up. You keep talking.
They always do a great job calling the games. It really just adds to the what we think that series could be. Poll wise, Alex Heinert from Midco Sports on the call with Dave Starman for that one. A top 15 matchup, as I think St. Cloud State is sitting at like 12th, depending on the rankings, or 11th or 12th. And Denver is still top 10.
Minnesota is 12.
Okay, maybe St. Cloud State is 11th.
Because it changed on Monday. Because it updated. Gophers were 10th Sunday when Colorado College beat them, and then Monday they dropped down to 12.
I know at one point Western was 10th. And I'm pretty sure that St. Cloud State was like just behind them, which is kind of interesting because St. Cloud swept Western earlier this year. St. Cloud is apparently 14th.
Yep, and Western is 10th, and Denver is 6th.
So 14 versus 6. Again, I honestly I think St. Cloud State is a little underrated. And
I think Denver's a little overrated for what they are right now.
That's honestly how I feel too. I'm gonna go with St. Cloud State to get the win on Friday. And Denver to respond on home ice and get the win on Saturday to split the weekend. Much like Denver did against Western earlier this year. And I honestly I see it being a split either way. I don't see a sweep coming here. Maybe if I did, I would lean more towards St. Cloud getting the sweep over Denver. But Denver feels, as much as they're overrated, they feel too good to be swept, but not good enough to sweep.
That makes sense. And I mean, I'm kind of, to me, this series is basically a pick 'em each game where I don't know which day to give to what team because it feels like a split series. I'm just basically going Denver Friday, St. Cloud Saturday because Denver's at home and giving them the win on a Friday night at home, and then St. Cloud taking the Saturday game. It's this is such a tough one to pick.
I really feel like these traveling teams have shown up very well on the first game. I don't know what it is about. Maybe they're getting that morning skate and getting their legs under them sooner. But we have seen a lot of away teams winning Friday games. And really, I think the only one, which is another reason why I don't feel comfortable or like necessarily confident in the Nebraska series, Nebraska UND series, those that could easily be flipped. Um, but I do feel pretty comfortable that Colorado College being traveling for so long is going to negatively affect them and give UMD an advantage on that series. But I did not sleep on away teams on Friday nights.
No, you don't. Really quickly before we're done, should we? Did they do the? I haven't seen it yet.
Yes, they did Players of the Week. I just had it. Damn it. The goaltending one always gets me, man. It always gets me. But I guess I'm not upset about that. I would say that Matt Davis is coming off an injury. These were his first two starts back. He played Niagara, which is a better team than Lindenwood, especially considering Western had already played Lindenwood previously this year. Matt Davis picks up the Goaltender of the Week award for his performance against Niagara, only allowing 3 goals on the weekend. The Rookie of the Week was Colorado College's Brent Link, as they split with my Minnesota. I almost said Miami, but it was Minnesota. Defenseman of the Week, Cooper Wiley for St. Cloud State. And Forward of the Week, Reese Gaber, who played extremely well in the North Dakota series versus Alaska Fairbanks.
Wait, how did? I'm confused.
Hmm.
How did a St. Cloud State? Oh, they went back all the way back to the 28th. That would be why. Because I was like, St. Cloud State didn't play, but they did. They went back and they didn't do one. They're including the holiday break.
Interesting. Very interesting. I wondered why there wasn't a Western defenseman, maybe who had could have been fitted right in that slot there.
Yeah, I was just looking at that. I'm like,
yeah, St. Cloud
didn't
didn't
play.
even play this week.
Then I looked at the dates at the bottom. I'm like, oh, they're doing one of those dumb things.
Yeah, double weekend,
Gotcha.
double week.
Yeah.
All right. See how it is. Yep. Cool. Good stuff.
They're probably from Miami.
I think we did. We do players.
We did everything.
I think we did Players of the Month last week. So I believe that's everything. I think that wraps it up for us. Once again, a big thank you to Commissioner Weems for joining us in the first part of the show tonight. I think I'm going to try and clip that out as a separate video.
Yeah, that was terrific.
And post that on the channel separately. Other than that, everything else will be the same. Brent was in the chat saying Heinert, Alex Heinert. Yes, thank you. We figured that one out while we sat here like idiots with dead air. That's what we do here. A big shout out to Brent for joining us last week. There are plans to have him on again in the future, so look out for those. There is the normal YouTubey stuff. There's that like button, that subscribe button, the share button, the dislike button. There's a comment section. Any of those things that you feel that you need to make use of, feel free to do it. You're a person capable of making decisions. Yeah, that's a cool thing to do. There is a Twitter handle. It is scrolling down the bottom of the screen right now. I don't feel like reading it because it's long and there's a lot of letters and some of them are missing, but it's at the bottom of the screen, or it was. There is a Gmail account that you can email if you so choose, and you don't think 140 characters is worth going to get your message across. So you could email, or you could, direct message the Twitter handle too. But that's just goalhornsandfightsongs@gmail.com. All of the words with all of the letters smushed together into one big long one. Because why not make people have to type all of them for a Gmail account? Let's see. Anything else? USA won gold medal. We're back into conference play. We had the commissioner on. That was cool. He's Mike. I'm Wes. We're out of here. Bye.